I think
So
the last thing I'd say is if we flash forward to the older grades, which is potentially the most complicated part of this discussion or the most simple, I think there you've got the advanced students, most of them you can almost just let do what they want to do because they're motivated. They've got the skills. They really don't need a strong instructional presence. It's the kids who aren't strong students that are really getting lost. And I see this a lot in my private practice. So the kids are just, they're behind anyway. They can't keep up. They just get further and further disenfranchised from what's going on. They eventually say, whatever, I didn't like this anyway, or I don't care if I get a D, that sort of thing. There's no chance for a teacher to physically walk around the room and say, hey, you okay? Or, stuff like that. So they've lost that kind of personal thing as well. That's the people I worry about at that age level.
And how can we as parents support those kids? Like if we think like I have one of those kids who's getting lost in the system, who's struggling, is not being seen, how can we support those kids?
Step one's always awareness, but the kid's probably not frequently going to volunteer it because if you say house school, it's fine.
Fine.
Like my kids are in their 20s now, so I'm through the whole window of every potential level of being ignored. So you're not going to have an in-depth conversation. So I think this is an advantage if you're home to just observe. Just won't be nosy or privacy things, I guess, but you kind of just stand outside the kid's room and just listen to what's going on in school and see if the kid's actually doing anything. Because most of these things are insidious, right? It's not like one day a kid becomes a disinterested student. It's a slowly evolving, decaying thing, unfortunately, where they lose a little bit of interest and they get a little bit behind. And because they're a little bit behind, they can't engage as much the next few days. And then the gap gets a little wider. And all of a sudden, 3 weeks later, they're like, I got to work so hard to catch up. It's not even worth it to me. And I never liked the subject anyway. I'm never going to be an architect. Why do I need to know math? And they how kids are, teenagers are, they take everything to the nth degree very quickly like that.
Yes.
Well, you may not even have a teenager, but you will know this, believe me.
No, I know.
But I'm just saying, this is just how it works. And so the answer is, I think parents got to stay on top of it if they're concerned at all. And even if they're not, they should make it their business to be. Not hours a day, but, check in, what's going on here? What are you learning? And just insist on more than a one-word answer. I think also early intervention is big. And this is where you do want to be in touch with the teacher. Now, when a teacher's in school, they should see this because they'll see the kid drifting off. But this is why I worry about it remotely, because I don't think it's harder to identify when these things are happening. So by the time it gets identified, the hole is deeper and wider. Mm-hmm. I'm not talking about kids with learning disabilities or spectrum-based stuff. I'm just talking about a disinterested, bored student who'd rather be, doing anything else than staring at a computer learning in class.
It'll be really interesting to see what happens next year, assuming we're going back in person next year.
Which I think
Please
is
let it happen in September. But it'll be really interesting to see what happens next year, as far as like it'll be a year like no other because of this whole break in the middle. But yeah, I hear what you're saying. Like we need to, if you're worried about your kid, like you got to kind of stay on top of them. And I was in that situation, like with my youngest daughter, and she wanted to do her work on a laptop in the corner of the corner couch. So nobody could see what was happening. Right. So then she would kind of drift off and be looking at like fish tank stuff on Pinterest. And she'd be doing her own research on like fish stuff, but she wasn't really engaged and all these things happen. But yeah, there's a level of insistence of like, okay, well, if you're, then I guess I'll have to email your teacher and ask if you can't tell me what's going on or show me what's going on. We want to see the plan and all of that. And we can do that kindly. Like it can feel shameful and embarrassing for a kid to be not on top of things, right? So we have to just remember that, take into account those feelings. We don't want to be adding layers of like shame and blame and hurt to a situation that may already be hurtful. But that's our job, right? Is to kind of like say, okay, what is going on for you? Like be interested, be curious, and be
Well,
the
I
advocate.
think the theme here is not that you want to foster any contentious relationship with your child, but I think the spirit is that in this circumstance, I think the likelihood of a child who would maybe or maybe not become out of it in school, whatever that means, is greater to happen and to happen more quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, you'd want to put the brakes on it as soon as you can.
Catch new episodes of the Mindful Mama podcast and other free resources, including the Mindful Mom Guide at mindfulmamamentor.com. You can listen to every back catalog episode, including interviews with Dr. Dan Siegel, Ianla Van Zandt, Sharon Salzberg, and get meditations, join our private Facebook group, and more. Go to mindfulmamamentor.com now. I'll see you there.